articulate our lives. And so this was our best shot for the meadow. Next. We actually, Cole was up there, the parliamentarians were up there, and we hoped that it would have an effect, but it did not. Yet.
Well, we don't know. We know that people are still, if we go back to Bonn, people will say, oh, how are you? How are the meadows doing?
The green heart's on.
Okay.
It happened.
It happened.
It was nice to be in Bonn and liked. It was good to get seats in restaurants, to tell you the truth. Well, the people from Holland gave us a call. They were from the Cultural Council of Holland.
Okay.
And it turned out they had a little problem.
The Green Heart of Holland, before we go into the problem, the Green Heart of Holland is the area of lowland Holland that has bit by bit over centuries been reclaimed from the sea. It is an area of dikes and canals. Can you, next. There is a picture. It is an area of dikes and canals, of farms and fields and small villages. In the early 1930s, the head of the Dutch airlines, KLM, flew over the area and pronounced it Holland's Green Heart, an area that should be protected and treasured. And so it was. In the mid-1990s, one of the governmental departments that was in charge of the prediction of population growth predicted an enormous surge in population growth and decided that thousands of houses would be needed in the near future, and the only land available would be in the Green Heart. The international developers were all delighted and eager to oblige and rushed to the area. Thus, the land containing the whole history of Holland would, in this scenario, need to be sacrificed, and 35 villages and 3 towns would be absorbed in the development, and a centuries-old lifestyle would vanish.
In effect, we're talking about the extraction of culture and the trade-off of a complete and complex and rich life gets replaced by a modern development. Well, it turns out that it turns out that we're looking at 600,000 houses. Next slide, and we're looking at a $200 billion economic engine. And we get this telephone call, or a series of them, without going into detail on it. They were very funny. But it turns out that they wanted us to show up, and they said, can you save the Green Heart of Holland? Can you give it a boundary or do something? So Helen and I, in a mad moment of arrogance, said, of course. And we signed a contract to that effect. The contract, of course, had small print. The small print was in both of our favors. If we didn't like what they were doing, we could leave. If they didn't like what we were doing, they could chase us out. So with that in mind, we started. This is the installation. Next. First thing we did was print a map 4 meters by 4 meters of Holland. That's the lowland. That's the land, the 800 or 900 square kilometers that are surrounded by Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Den Haag, and Utrecht. So the first thing we did was print the map backwards. And then we put 300,000 houses in it, crossed it up, and you could see where the, what's happened there? We've lost some of it. Well, it doesn't matter. So what happened was that they said, why have you done this? So we said, you're developing your country backwards, so we printed your map backwards. This annoyed people no end, but got us some attention. Then the next thing we did was write a warning. Go ahead.
As we did the map, we did a lot of images, but this was the text. Looking at the map of Holland, seeing it as the expression of one moment in 1,200 years of contested history about who will command the land and why and how, seeing it as a metaphor for yet another contest as to who will shape the future of this physical terrain, understood to be the Randstad and the Green Heart, where in a 10-year moment, less than 1% of the time of its whole history as a civilization, The people on this ground must construct a response in physical terms to intense population pressure, coupled to an expansion-committed economic engine, in such a way that these two self-reproducing forces, mutually energizing and interrelated, will consume much of this lands available in the Green Heart, which do not have already ecological or historical or other civic designations, and unless or until a new direction is set in place, an alternative consensus agreed upon by governmental and economic and civic institutions on limiting growth. For in the absence of such an alternate consensus clearly expressed on the ground, the outcome for the Green Heart, the Randstad, and the lowlands of Holland appears to be unfortunate in the extreme, mostly unnecessary, but mostly inevitable.
The Dutch are very practical folk.
Your mic went out.
Oh, the Dutch are very practical folk. They said if that's backwards, what's forwards? Next. Well, I don't know how. Okay, what's next? Well, we said, listen, up top, there's, you know what a polder is? A polder is the Dutch word for field. And the polders in those lowlands all have water around them that are pumped out. So that's what a polder is. And one polder up there went wild. And it was incredibly biodiverse. So we said, why don't you make a polder ring around it, a biodiversity ring around? And then, why don't you make parks, those big wiggles are parks, why don't you make parks between your cities so that you don't, so you do something right instead of backwards? Because right now, you're going to set up the conditions where you bleed your cities into each other. And you fragment your ecosystems entirely. So we held a principle that ecosystems need to be
ecosystems, in order to continue, need to be contiguous and continuous. Cities and elements of culture, in order to maintain their identity, need to be framed. So instead of doing what we should be doing with that, we frame our ecosystems into little plots of land here and there, some larger and some smaller, and even occasionally a big one. And we let our cities just bleed into each other until they lose their identity. I mean, we've done that in California all the way, having a city up the coast.
So, this was pretty much accepted. Next. After a few little changes, this is an engineering drawing. This is a pre-drawing to an engineering drawing. If the engineers followed this, they could design from it. Next. Well, the real question, the question was, where are you going to put 600,000 houses?
So we had a landscape architecture graduate student working with us, and we gave her a free trip up and down the whole area, and please see what she could find for places to put the houses.
So she came back, she found 600,000 places for 600,000 houses around the perimeter, and not interfering with any other damn thing. In fact, the new houses, if they came, would be against gardens, and some of the poorer people would get the better land, which was an unintended outcome. Well, they loved us. My goodness. We went through Parliament, they liked it. We went through the Green Party, declared us
the Green Party, made us their platform. And the Minister of the Environment put it in as her proposal for the next year. 2 months pass. We get a little note that we should leave and not come back. Why should we leave and not come back? A new election came, and everybody was voted out, and our idea was shelved. And a right-wing man was there, and he thought, what? Not have all this land developed? Not have all this money rushing in?